Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme, exploring jazz music with the band Bad Bad Not Good. All one word, all capitals, never heard of them before, but this track, Confessions Part 3, features a massive favorite of mine, someone who's been on the channel multiple times, Colin Stetson, that beautiful saxophonist slash composer. Actually has some really great compositions as well. So, let's dive into this and see what Bad Bad Not Good is bringing to the table today. Sitting over here holding my breath. Jeez. So this is an interesting one. Coming at it completely from a casual listen. I it's one of those things where I I can really appreciate and almost connect with their intended concept, the intended emotion, but there's something in there that just keeps me from having that full connection, and I can't quite understand what's going on here. And the ideas in isolation are not my cup of tea, typically. I really have to, have that emotional connect with them to, really engage with the music. And it's weird because, like I said, I'm right on that cusp. Like if I can just find this last key to open this final, lock, I can really connect with this, and enjoy it. But without that, I'm left just kind of wondering what's going on. Um, so the elephant in the room, at least as far as I'm concerned, is Colin. I kind of feel like he's getting pigeonholed a bit. Uh, Everything I listen to from him, he's the circulatory breathing dude. He's the texture playing sax dude. I've listened to, he did a soundtrack for a film or a video game. I'm not sure which one. And I checked that out and I really enjoyed his style when he's not behind the saxophone and he's pure composer mode. Um, I really enjoy his way to craft mood, and he does the same thing on saxophone as well, but he always does it in the same vein, and I don't know how much of that is him or how much of it is the expectations of him. I've listened to his work collaboratively in a trio. I've listened to his work in isolation. I've listened to his work with the Ocean. I think it was. He was featured on the final track of their latest album. Might not have been the Ocean. And now a featured bit here with Bad Bad Not Good. And every time, he does the same thing. He plays quickly, playing around with texture and dynamic quality while not stopping. I I talked about on Monday with Miles Davis with the solos there. I said, you got to have pauses here. It's not like rock where you can just continue to shred. It's an aerophone. It requires air, which means the person needs to breathe, which means there's going to be natural breaks in the solo where the performer needs to breathe. And I said, except for circulatory breathing. And that's where Colin steps in and he showcases how you can play an instrument for 5 minutes straight. Um, but this is also just kind of what I'm coming to expect of him. And like that, I don't know how much of that is just how he prefers to play or if that's the pigeonhole that he's been put into. Is he the circulatory breathing guy? And so every time he's featured, that's his part because that's what people are expecting when they bring him on board to collaborate. Regardless, I think here it works just as well as it does in most of the other situations. Colin has a way of bringing pain into his performances. And I mean that earnestly. I do. He, more so than any other type of experimental or avant garde performance, I really connect with Colin's style of performance. The constant use of circulatory breathing to play pieces that were never intended to be put on an aerophone. The fast 16th notes that he chooses in a lot of his stuff that requires a ton of muscle dexterity and um, consistency, the endurance of it all. mixed with the fact that he's not afraid to leave in imperfections. There's notes in here that squeaked, where he ended up hitting an octave higher than intended. There's notes in here that don't quite have the punch that's necessary. It almost feels like they're ghost notes on the sax. When he brings the volume down quite a bit and loses a bit of the air pressure. There's probably muscle lockups where, he's playing super fast and one of his fingers just decides this note isn't happening. The other seven fingers and 9 fingers, if you include the thumbs. I actually don't. I know there is one thumb key on the sax. Well, on the tenor sax at least. I've never tried to play an alto. I don't know if both hands have a thumb key. But anyways, the rest of the fingers though, of the digits, play the proper note, but one finger just decides to lock up and not do it, and he just rolls with it. He includes it, and part of it I think is just the raw endurance of this. There aren't too many takes that you can do of this before you hit a degrading performance. I think something like this, Colin comes in, warms up, says, "You guys get one take. Whatever I make is what you get," because I'm not going to be able to do this as well on a second or third time. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the truth. But yeah, he leaves those blemishes in there. And it to me it always it had so much humanity, but because they're so prominent, you can't ignore the squeaks, especially when he's doing the same exact run over and over and over. Then there's a random high-pitched note that doesn't feel like it fits in there and is not repeated. You know it's a mistake. It's where his body failed to keep up with his intentions. But I don't know. It's probably that mixed with the fact that he's always has this haunting atmosphere in everything he plays. And this is no different. When we look at what the rest of the band is doing harmonically, the chords that the bass is going through, the melodic lines and notes that our other lead saxophone is playing, it is it's a sad song. It's got a lot of the bluesiness going on to it, right? And so when you pair that with this, much like in the way of the what was it, the power, the strength it took to leave you, or something like that, the love it took to leave you. Yep, the love it took to leave you. When you just pair that atmosphere with the physical requirements and mistakes that come out of being human and not being perfect, it creates such a powerful pain to the playing. And I really connect with it. I don't know what it is about Colin's style, but as much as I feel like, oh, he's just doing a shtick again, it works. um, and so that's what Colin does for the whole song. At like minute 6 or whatever, he starts to do more abrupt, shorter concepts in a sort of call and response duet with the other saxophone. But up until that moment, from the beginning of the song, it's just that circulatory breathing thing. 16th notes, rolling with the punches. Mistakes come up, they get recorded. Now, this gets paired with a very sparse drum idea. Primarily just hi-hat, I think, is the predominant one. There is a lower one, bass kick maybe. I don't think it's the snare. If it is a snare, it's a very light snare hit, which makes sense because it's jazz. Well, it's jazzy. We'll get into that later. I don't know if I would call this jazz, but I can see why it was suggested for Jazz Week. We have a bass that's walking a bass line. Occasionally plays around with staying on a single note. But there's a lot of movement to the bass concept, which is necessary because it's really the only instrument carrying the chordal movements. And then we have a right saxophone. There is a synthesizer or piano in here. It's exceptionally quiet. It is primarily playing suspended notes. I don't know if it was one note or a chord of some sort. It was so buried in the mix, I really only got the timbre of it, not necessarily the notes it was playing. It fills in the gaps in everything else, since almost everything else is, there's not really suspended notes anywhere except for our lead saxophonist, but he has to breathe, unlike Colin, who can do this forever. um, well, I shouldn't say he has to breathe. Colin has to breathe too. He's not a cyborg, but other saxophonists needs to take breaths, traditional breaths, whereas Colin does not. So there are breaks in that, despite primarily utilizing held out notes. So we have this synthesizer or piano or something. I think it's a keyboard at least. Underneath everything, very quiet though, and it fills in all the space between all the moving parts. What I think is most interesting is that the rhythm section, keyboard, drums, and bass, fill out the emotional atmosphere of the track, whereas our two saxophones showcase two different variations on this emotion. Where Colin brings about a lot of pain and anguish in this melancholy, our right saxophone brings out the sorrow. It's the dreariness, it's the dragging the legs. It's almost like anxiety versus, I don't know, depression almost. Uh, it's a lot of it has to do as well with the dynamic qualities. A lot of the long held out notes end up starting small and getting bigger, and it kind of has this wow, kind of have this rise and fall effect to it that feels like trying to find energy building up towards something and then just petering out at the last minute and not being able to follow through. When we combine both of these, we get some sort of dichotomy. It could be a split mind, it could be a multifaceted approach to emotional storytelling, but we get a combination of pain and anguish and anxiety and depression and sloth and a want to move forward but can't. It starts to paint a very real picture of a situation someone could be in. And all of the mixed emotions that they could be going through while attempting to figure out what they should do, or if they know what they should do, how they should do it. There is a reluctance to move forward and an anxiety about that reluctance. Anybody who has procrastinated knows that feeling. You're mad that you aren't making progress, but you're also not making progress because you can't find the energy to do it, and it becomes cyclical. So it's really interesting then that at like minute 5.5 or 6 or whatever, the saxes just stop. The bass and drums, they continue to play their thing. Nothing changes with them, but the saxes completely stop. It is a clear state of mind at that moment. And we begin to see a conversation between our two saxes, our two sides. They have a back and forth, a call and response. They seem to be talking to each other. I'm not sure if a resolution is really met. I'm not sure if a process to leave these emotions behind and take the next step in moving forward exists. I don't know if that's what the song is about. but it is a change, and that's good, because up to that point, I couldn't stop holding my breath. This song made me so tense, and it was great just to have that moment of relief, just to have 30 seconds of clarity. And that's kind of sad when you think about it. I think a lot of people take for granted, just being able to get through their day. Where 30 seconds of internal mental silence is just a relief. It's something you might look forward to. I don't know what in particular the song is about, but I know the mental state it put me in. I know the emotions that I explored through the music, utilizing it as a conduit. And it really makes me interested to check out the other two parts. I I know Confessions Part 1 does not feature Colin. I don't know if Part 2 does. I couldn't find that one. Well, let me say I didn't find that one. I was trying to find Confessions Part 2 on Apple, or Part 3, and I landed on Part 1 first. But I'm interested to check out the trilogy here, or maybe more. I don't know if they continue to explore this idea. Um, and see what they're crafting with this. But even if the songs as a series don't do much to change my mind or to impress me beyond what this has, I'm still quite happy that y'all have had me check this one out. It's a song that's going to be in my head for a while, much like The Love It Took to Leave You. There's just something striking about Colin's works, or anytime he's involved in someone else's work, anything that he collabs on. They're musical images, so to speak. It's sounds that get etched into my brain, and I have a difficult time forgetting. I said I was going to bring up genre. I mean, I guess technically I should. I kind of wanted to leave it on that really nice, profound note, but we'll get into genre a little bit. Um, is this jazz? It's definitely jazz instrumentation. In fact, I referred to the bass, drum, and piano as the rhythm section. That's definitely a jazzy term there. Are they doing things jazzy? The drums are. They're very sparse. Doesn't necessarily have to be jazz for sparse drumming, but given the context around it, the walking bass line, the piano playing chords, yeah, I would say that the sparse drumming does lend itself more towards a jazzy style, or at least utilizing the term jazz to describe it. The right saxophonist, I'm going to assume the saxophonist for Bad Bad Not Good. Yes, very bluesy. I think Colin is what confuses my minds. Colin brings about a semi jazz, primarily classical avant gardeness to the song that it mixes everything up for me. So in just from that angle, I don't have an answer for this. Genre is kind of dumb anyways. It's elusive. Sometimes it's based on feel, sometimes it's based on, subjective or objective facts. And all the time, it's rarely useful for conversation. So, is there a point in me even trying to figure it out? No, probably not. But it is Jazz Week. Does this belong here? Yes. The foundation is jazz. I don't know if I would call this a jazz track. Apple does. Apple Music has this filed away under jazz. Um, but to me, it's more. I guess experimental jazz. Maybe avant-garde jazz. So I guess the bass I'd still use is jazz. This is jazz. Okay, let's wrap this up. This whole section was unnecessary. Those are my thoughts on Bad Bad Not Good's Confessions Part 3. You can't say that any other way, right? It's all caps. It's all one word. That's just how my brain reads it. It's how it wants to say it. It's how it wants to roll off the tongue. Confessions Part 3 featuring Colin Stetson. It's where y'all come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this one. Anything that you want to add on to what I said or correct me on. Just let me know if you enjoyed it or not. Above that, head into the comments. Above the comment section, head into the description box. You'll find a link for Linktree in there. It takes you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel, including links to help support the channel, find ways to get into the Discord community, and so much more. You can email me, check out the music I've been making, the music I've been listening to, just all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, we have a special selection up next. It is a 30-minute track. It is pushing right up there at the cusp of what I typically put as a soft limit on the special selections. I have no idea what it is. The band name is not familiar, I don't think. I don't know what genre we're looking at. It's some sort of big epic, though. So, if that sounds interesting, check that out. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We'll continue on with Jazz Week and check out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.